Well, you are finally there. You have made it to the last video for your project. And after this video is over, your Wayne Thiebaud value, tint, shade, space, foreground, middle ground, background project will be over. And you will have learned so much. But this last step is an important one. This time on your project, you are going to be adding the shadows, because one thing that Wayne Thiebaud did a lot in his artwork was he showed lots of shadows. You know that he did cakes and pies and things you eat. You also know that he did sort of an outline effect around a lot of his objects. Another thing he did was he used a lot of light and shadow. And so many of his paintings have very bold and distinct shadows. So we're going to include that too, because we also have a lot of light and shadow, and you worked very hard to get that. But now we're going to put some shadow on the table. But I really need you to truly understand why a shadow is formed and which side of the object does it go on. So we're going to take a look at a couple of Wayne Thiebaud's paintings. We're going to examine his shadows, and we're going to learn why a shadow is made and where. Take a look. Here we have an artwork by Wayne Thiebaud. These are candy sticks sitting in a glass jar on a table. We can see by looking at the table that there is a dark shadow that is being cast from these sticks of candy. In this picture of 3 milkshakes, you can also see on the table a very dark, bold shadow coming from each cup. Here we have some cupcakes, although I don't think Wayne Thiebaud's cupcakes are quite as good as yours. Each of these cupcakes, you can see, has a shadow on one side. So, where does the shadow belong? An artist does not just randomly paint shadows. There is a reason that the shadow is where it is. In this picture, you see the sunshine. That is our light source. And from the sunshine, you see those arrows pointing to the tree, which is our object. When the light from the sun hits the tree blocks the light from passing through, creating a shadow on the ground on the opposite side of the light source. So this is all very scientific, and we need to understand why a shadow is cast, where it is cast, before we can add shadows to our project. Now let's take a look at the candy sticks one more time. Let's take a look and see exactly what Wayne Thiebaud did. First, we have to have a light source. So there's our light source. It is on the left. And from the light source, the light shines the brightest on the left-hand side of each object. So you can see that yellow arrow pointing to a very white spot. Well, if the light is on the left, that means that the darkness or the shadow will be on the opposite side, far away from the light, because the light can't get there. So there we have a line of shading on the right side of that piece of candy. Well, the whole thing is blocking light from the table, so on the right-hand side, the side that is opposite from the light, we've got the shadow that the candy jar is casting onto the table. Now remember, the shadow is always cast opposite from the light. So if the light source is on the left, like in this picture, the shadow will be on the right. Now let's do that same thing to our cupcake picture. First, let's provide a light source. There it is. On my paper, the light source is on the right. Yours, if you follow the directions, will be also. That means that I'm going to have my lightest paint, my tint, on the right-hand side because that's closest to the light source. Obviously, then that means my darkest side will be on the left because it's on the side that can't get the light as well. That means the shadow that I draw on the table will also be on the left. It will be on the side with the darkness on the cupcake cups, the side where I used black in my paint and made a shade. Now remember, always, the shadow is on the side opposite from the light. All right, here we go. The final step. It's pretty easy. It's actually pretty quick too. Now that you know where to put the shadows, all you're going to need is your paper, obviously, and from this brown box of black chalk, in the chalk box where you got all the rest of the chalks that you were using, you will just need to pick up one piece. That's all you're going to need. I will recommend, though, for this to go easier for you, to get the piece of chalk that is square, because those corners are going to help you to control the black. And whenever we're adding black chalk to something, there's always a danger of it becoming a giant black blurry mess. So we really want to control how we apply this chalk. So get a square one if you can. And if there's not enough for everyone, then I would wait for one. Don't try to use any of the others. Trust me on this. You don't want to ruin your progress at the very last step. That would be bad. All right, I'm going to show you how to put this on. So here I have my piece of black chalk, a square one with corners, and I'm ready to get started. I am actually going to start with my smallest cupcake because I'm right-handed. And if I make my shadow here on my large cupcake, then I'm going to probably be rubbing my hand on my drawing and smearing it everywhere. So I'm going to actually start over here so that I can draw this and then move over here, and this one will be out of my way. If you are left-handed, you probably will want to start here on the big one so that when you draw, you will be avoiding the area that you drew just before this. So right-handed, that's me, I'm going to start with my background cupcake and then go to the foreground. Left-handed, if that's you, start with the foreground, go to the middle ground, and then finish with the background. It truly doesn't matter which one you do. I just don't want this black chalk to make a mess out of my picture. So I'm going to start up here. And this is what you're going to do. I'm going to draw or color with the corner of my chalk. And I am not ever, never, ever, never, never, ever going to just draw black, dark, dark, dark. I want to draw gently because I want some of my table color to show through. I'm going to start in about the middle of the cupcake on the bottom. And I'm going to just sort of sketch. I'm not really drawing, I'm not really coloring. I'm just sort of sketching some horizontal lines from the middle out to the left because my shadow is going to be on the same side as the darkness of my cup, opposite from the light side. And I'm just going to do some sketchy little lines. Then I'm going to take my blending tool, which is my pinky. You want your smallest one. You want a delicate touch. And I'm just going to fuzz that black chalk a little bit so that it looks more like a shadow and less like coloring or less like lines. That's done. That's all it needs to be. So I'm going to move down to the next one, use the corner of my chalk, start about in the middle, and sketch on some horizontal lines. You be the judge of how long this needs to be. This is a pretty tall cupcake, so I'm going to get my lines out there about that far. Blending tool, a light touch, keep it light. We're just making it look like a fuzzy area of shadow. We don't want this to look like a big black blob, some other object sitting on our table. We just want it to look a little bit fuzzy. Perfect. Last one. Use the corner of the chalk. Start in about the middle. A few sketchy lines. This is my biggest cupcake, so I'm going to bring those lines out a little bit longer. Not black and hard, just sketchy. Use my blending tool. Fuzz that out a little bit. And now I have some dark, bold shadows in the style of Wayne Thiebaud on the correct side, showing my darkness, showing my shadow, opposite of my light source. And I'm finished. When you get this far, you are ready to turn this in. Congratulations, you've completed an entire project on your own with your iPad, and you've done a fantastic job. Something to be proud of. See you in a minute when you turn this in.